On today's show, Klay Thompson is a Dallas Maverick now. What does he bring to the table, and why did he leave Golden State? We'll talk about all that and more with Kylen Mills from Locked On Warriors on today's Locked On Mavs.
I'm Luka Doncic, and this is Locked On Mavericks podcast.
Mavericks, NBA champions. Bang! It's good, and the Mavericks have won the game.
If you don't believe, you shouldn't be here.
Loyalty never fades away.
And welcome. You're locked on to the Dallas Mavericks. My name is Nick Angstadt, media member and NBA channel manager for the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for being part of the show, making Locked On Mavs your first listen today. Well, the best way you can help us grow the show is to listen every day on any podcast platform. Leave us a 5-star review, like the video on YouTube, and comment anything below. Let me know in the comment section, what's one question you have about Klay Thompson? Curious what you guys want to know. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more as playoffs wind down. The sports stop sporting as much as we want them to, but this summer FanDuel is hooking us all up with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right, there's something for everyone every day all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started today. And joining me on the show today from Locked On Warriors, from the Big Ten Network, the Pac-12 Network, all the networks everywhere.
Pretty much.
NBC Bay Area.
Here all day. Yeah.
So many places, so many outlets everywhere. She's literally flying cross country later this week to go do another job. She's just got gigs everywhere. Kylen Mills of Locked On Warriors. What you got for me today?
Oh, Nick, it's great to see you. If you thought you were going to rest in the offseason, nope, not happening. I don't rest. I work for as a freelancer for a million networks, and you don't get to rest either now because it took like one day before free agency just went. So here we are. And now Klay Thompson to the Mavs is not something I thought I'd be saying like 2 weeks ago, but that's the reality. And it's the end of an era for Golden State. Wild. Just wild.
It changes so fast. That's something Jake Fisher said the other day where someone called him out. Like, you said that this was going to happen a week ago. And he goes, it was going to happen a week ago. And then all of a sudden, 5 things changed. And then all of a sudden, it's not going to happen anymore. That's the way that the NBA thing moves. I always joke with the Locked On NFL channel with like Ross Jackson and some of those about they all plan their shows in advance and get to schedule them out and all that. And I'm like, I don't think we can do that in the NBA. It changes too fast. Like, you just never know from one day to another. Anything can happen.
On the day of the draft, Nick, on the day of the draft, I did a show and had it posted and whatever. And like an hour later, they traded away their pick. 6 hours later, the pick came back to them. I'm like, oh, there's nothing you can do. The news cycle is nuts. And here we are talking about Klay Thompson being a Dallas Maverick. Wild.
Drives us nuts, but kind of like as a fan, I love it. Like, I love that it's different every day. There's something new, and this Mavericks team always gives us something to talk about. That's absolutely insane. So we'll talk about what Klay Thompson brings on the court. There was a report that Klay Thompson had some antics, that his antics were just as crazy as Draymond Green. So we'll unpack that and talk about for the audio listeners. I need you to know how deep of an eye roll Kylen just gave.
Yes, my eyes just rolled into a block behind my house, but go ahead.
We'll talk about that, but I want to start here. The exit for Klay Thompson, it's obviously a big deal for the Warriors. He's the Splash Brother. He's been there for a long time, his whole career, 4 championships, been through so much stuff. Why did it end now? Why is he not on the Golden State Warriors right now?
Oh, it's a little bit of a long-winded question, but you got to go back to last offseason when there were talks going on as far as extending Klay Thompson going into this past season. The Warriors reportedly offered him a 2-year deal worth $48 million. And ultimately, Klay said, I'm going to bet on myself. I think I'm worth more. I think I can get a longer contract. Let's wait and see what happens this upcoming season and revisit those talks as we approach free agency. Well, Klay had a down year. It wasn't a great year. I say that. I know we're going to get more into what Klay Thompson brings to the table on the court coming up in a little bit. I say a down year, but I mean, he still shot nearly 39% from 3. So this is not to make any Mavs fans panic, but by his standards, a down year comes back to the negotiating table. And also a lot of things change for the Warriors. They're in the position where they now need to make a major move to make this team title contenders and to be able to take advantage of Steph Curry's prime. Steph is still in his prime. I stand by that. Some folks now questioning it. He's still in his prime. Look at his numbers from this past year. So they're now in a situation where they're trying to execute trades. They're working under a tighter budget than they already were a season ago. And suddenly Klay Thompson, after a down year, is a little bit more expendable. They're waiting a little bit longer to figure out what other pieces are going to fall into place before having some of those talks. And meanwhile, Klay Thompson is feeling disrespected. He's feeling offended. 1 year ago, Draymond Green got signed to a 4-year, $100 million deal by the Warriors. Klay Thompson wanted 3+ years. He's expecting maybe not that exact amount and dollar amount, but he's expecting something in that same ballpark. The Warriors, from what I'm told, were not ready to bring anything close to that to the negotiating table. Reports are out there. I don't think that's a big secret. And I think Klay Thompson felt disrespected. You saw the antics a couple weeks ago. Klay unfollowed the Golden State Warriors. I said right away, he is disrespected. He is looking for a certain length of contract in addition to the dollar amount that he is not getting anywhere close to. I think he's looking back and saying, not just Draymond Green, but Andrew Wiggins got a 4-year deal 1 year prior to Draymond Green getting signed last offseason. Jordan Poole, before getting traded, got a 4-year deal. Steph Curry got a max 5-year, which is not a surprise, but I think he's looking back and saying, look at the history here of the people you're signing. I was a key part in building this dynasty that won you 4 championships. And we're not even close to being on the same page. So I think that he was offended and disrespected by the way the conversations were going or not going. Just over a week ago, there were reports out the Warriors hadn't even given him a hard offer because they were waiting to see what happened as free agency drew closer. And I think as time went on, Klay started to say, what the heck? What about me? I deserve respect because of what I did here. So the relationship was fractured. That's the bottom line. And when it came down to it, both sides felt like they weren't going to see eye to eye and that the best move was to execute a sign and trade, which is exactly what happened. Klay Thompson ultimately taking a pay cut, as reports are saying, to come to the Dallas Mavericks. And it definitely is a pay cut compared to that 2-year, $48 million deal. But that's what the market is right now. He wanted to go to a team that he felt like was going to contend. Apparently, the state taxes were in discussion. But as far as the relationship went, Klay Thompson wanted a lot more than what the Warriors were able to give. And from what I've been told within the organization, it was the length of time, not the dollar amount on the contract that mattered. He wanted 3+ years, and the Warriors were not willing to give it.
Yeah, it's funny. I was laughing because the end of what you were just saying about Klay Thompson, about the feeling disrespected, not getting the number that he wanted, and then getting the years and all that, and then deciding to leave. It sounded a lot like what happened with Jalen Brunson, where they just were not on the same page with it. And then he's like, I want to go somewhere where I'm going to be more respected and I'm going to have a bigger role and potentially can be an all-star. And it's obviously a different scenario, but it sounded that same kind of thing where, did Michael Thompson weigh in at all? Because Rick Brunson definitely weighed in on Jalen Brunson. That's one thing that Mavs fans are a little nervous about is that we just went from Tim Hardaway Sr. Have you ever seen Tim Hardaway Sr.'s comments about Tim Hardaway Jr. and the Mavericks? They've been nothing but positive. They have been not positive the entire time he's been here.
Michael Thompson isn't quite that vocal, so you can step off the panic button a little bit. But I think the role also was something you brought up that could be a factor as well, because Klay Thompson didn't want to come off the bench, and more reports are coming out. That's the role they would have carved out for him this upcoming season. It happened at times this past season, but to go into a contract saying, hey, you're definitely going to be number 2 behind a 2nd-year player in Brandon Pajemski, that's also a tough pill to swallow. That's a thing that I've kept bringing up to this, is that the Mavs will now bring their 2 best perimeter defenders, in Najee Marshall and Quentin Grimes, off the bench. And how do they reconcile that? And they bring in Klay Thompson, and can they make a good defense with Luka, Kyrie, and Klay Thompson at 35 years old in February? Can they make a good defense out of that? That's a problem for Jason Kidd to figure out that ego. And now he's got a new ego to try and figure out and to try and work in. And I think that the Mavs culture has been very good, and they've brought guys in. And I mean, just look at what they just did with Kyrie Irving. So if you're worried about bringing Klay Thompson in, they brought Kyrie Irving and folded him right in, made him feel valued, made him feel respected. And so I think the Mavericks have they're uniquely positioned to be able to hopefully make Klay feel like he is valued and respected. And he took that offer. I was honestly surprised hearing some of the rumors about he turned down less money from the Lakers, turned down less money from the Warriors. He wanted the extra years, and it sounds like he wants the role, and he's going to get that role. He's going to start for the Mavericks. They're going to do that. They'll respect him in that way. Yeah. But if it comes down to it during the season, and they're like, hey, Klay, we might sit you down. We might bring you off the bench just to start. Our starting lineup is struggling. What's going to happen? That's a thing for Jason Kidd to figure out. And so that's a long way off. We're 4 months from the beginning of the season. We can talk about that forever this offseason. But yeah, it's interesting the way that it ended for Klay Thompson, because it does seem like he didn't feel like he was respected there, and now he's coming to a new place. And I think a change of scenery would be really good for him. And so I'm interested to see how he responds to that. But coming up, let's talk about on the court. What does Klay Thompson bring on the court? What have you seen from him on the court? What does a down year for Klay Thompson mean? There was frustration from Warriors fans about what Klay Thompson was bringing to the court. Let's unpack some of that. We'll talk about all that and more coming up.
If you don't believe, you shouldn't be here.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel Sportsbook has all kinds of props and odds and lines and spreads and money lines and all kinds of things that you can use to get in on the action. summer is here. And so now you've got baseball, you've got the Texas Rangers, you've got WNBA, you've got NBA stuff too. You've got Copa America, you've got the Euro 2024. FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone all day, all summer long. You got to check it all the time to see what's available and see what's out there. Let's go WNBA. Let's go. They've got a Caitlin Clark tab, which I always find really funny. Rookie of the year, minus 620 for Caitlin Clark, plus 400 for the field. I feel like she's going to win that one. So if you want to throw away money, you can pick the field if you want to do that. The championship, the Aces plus 155, the Liberty plus 180, the Lynx plus 700, Connecticut Sun plus 850, our beloved Dallas Wings plus 24,000. If you want to throw away money, put some on that one as well. All kinds of stuff. FanDuel.com/lockedon. All kinds of bonuses throughout the summer. Check it out. FanDuel.com/lockedon. Thanks everybody for hanging out with us on Locked On Mavs, being part of the show, part of the Raccoon Squad, listening every day. Appreciate each and every one of you for being part of the show and listening and being part of us all throughout the offseason. We're a 5-day-a-week Dallas Mavericks show. Kylen hosts a daily Locked On Warriors show as well. We've got a daily show that covers your team every day across the NBA, the NFL, MLB, NHL, 60 colleges. It's crazy. There's so many shows.
Can I ask a question? Where did the Raccoon Squad thing come from? Because I've always wanted to know.
It's a great question. I get it many times. I get it many times a day, basically. So it's a long story. If you look in the live tab on YouTube for Locked On Mavs, Isaac and I tell the story in his goodbye episode. So you can go check the chapters and read that. But basically, Isaac had my old co-host had a tree in the backyard that had these pears, and all these raccoons would like congregate there. There'd be like dozens of raccoons in his backyard all the time, and he would just tell the dumb stories about the raccoons every once in a while on the show. When I'd say, "What you got for me, Isaac?" every day, and he would just say whatever. And then a listener said, all the raccoons congregating on the pear tree is like all the listeners congregating when a Locked On Mavs episode posts.
Oh, I love that.
And we laughed really hard, and it's very stupid. And it's funny to hear people say that to you in person. Like, I'm part of the Raccoon Squad.
I love that. I love that so much.
That's
what
it is.
You got plenty of that at the finals. Lots of Raccoon squatters out there.
Yeah, and you have to say the full word. I saw a comment recently that was half the word. Can't do half the word. Got to be the full word.
Okay. Nope. Yep. Definitely.
Nope. Yep. Got to be the full word. All right, let's talk about Klay Thompson. We'll talk about what Klay Thompson brings as a holistic player, not just half a player, but a holistic player. He's 34. He just shot 39% on 9 threes a game, and you call that a down year. What does a down year look like for Klay Thompson?
The big thing, or the big reason why, at least I would also call it a down year, is because of the inconsistencies. There were times where all of a sudden he'd be on fire and he's hitting every shot from beyond the arc. There were games like his last game in a Golden State Warriors uniform against the Sacramento Kings in the play-in game. People keep bringing up and showing the stats, but he goes 0 for 10. And that's the reality of what Klay Thompson was this past season. Where the Warriors were at, they needed a reliable secondary scorer. They need someone who can come in and bring 20 plus every single night. There can't be this up and this down. There can't be some nights it's 25, sometimes it's 30 from Klay Thompson, and then you get a big goose egg. They need someone who's going to be consistent. The reason why I think he'll be great in this role with Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving is that you don't need him to be the secondary scorer. You've got two. He can be the third. He can be a role player. And I think he's a great role player to bring in. I also think simplifying his role is going to make a huge difference, because the other thing is with the Warriors, I think it's tough when you've got Steph Curry, you've got Klay Thompson. I think there were a lot of times where Klay would feel like he has to do too much in terms of creating off the dribble, creating for himself. Despite the fact the Warriors do have a motion offense, they want the ball to be moving. Sometimes he does too much. And I think simplifying the role, catch and shoot, that's all we need you to do. That's when he's at his best. Klay Thompson, elite catch and shoot. You look at the Mavs, they led the league in open shots created this past year. Klay Thompson, golden for that. I actually think this is a great fit. This is a great place for him to go because of that. But I think just with the Warriors system, the fact they needed someone to step up as a secondary scorer, he was forcing it. He was doing too much. It's something he's done, especially since coming back from his injuries, Nick, because I think him as a competitor felt like I need to be doing more. I need to immediately be back to that level I was before dealing with 2+ insane injuries, being out 2+ years, 900+ days between when he returned from his Achilles tear that was following an ACL tear. 900+ days. Like, you're not going to immediately be the same player, and you might never be the same player, but I think there was this intrinsic pressure he put on himself to go back to that level that led to him sometimes doing too much, taking tough contested shots. Like I said, creating off the dribble, which isn't his forte. He's at his best when he simplifies it. And I think that's something he can do with the Mavs, which is why this could be great for him.
Yeah, there's all the people questioning, he's going to a completely different offensive system with the Mavericks, where it's one guy handles the ball and pounds the rock and then creates for others and all that. And it's like, but he also, Klay doesn't have to run around all these screens all the time and run 4 miles a game and figure out how to get shots and all that.
The off-ball movement, I think, can be good too when you look at Kyrie and Luka. His ability to move off the ball and create space and figure out how to get open, that ultimately is a good thing. But yes, maybe you don't have to run 4 miles a game. That's not a bad thing. You know what I mean? That's not a bad thing. I don't think there's any concern that he'll fit into the system. So it's interesting if that's something the fans are questioning. I don't think that'll be an issue.
I think it was fans of other teams I saw for the most part. They were questioning that. But I think that in the same way that when they brought in Kyrie, they melded together this faster pace because Kyrie wanted to push the pace. The end of the first season when Kyrie got traded over, it was like watching two different teams where Luka, they played the slowest pace in the NBA and they would pound it and they would walk the ball up. And Kyrie would try and push and play fast and all this. And you're like, we have two different squads basically on this team. And I think with Klay coming into the mold, I think they can run more of that. Let's move a little bit more. Let's run Klay off screens and do this. We can run Kyrie off screens and do a little bit more and involve that into more of because the Mavs in the finals, they got stuck with, hey, we've got two guys that can dribble. Yeah. That's it. Right. That's where their offense got so limited. And I think
if you stop the dribble penetration, then it's too one-dimensional. You're done.
That's it. And that was it. And so I think bringing Klay into the fold opens up the playbook a little bit, opens up their offensive structure to allow a little bit more creativity, different things into it. And then, he's going to get 5 or 6 wide open shots a game just because Luka can create for him. He's just going to stand there and Luka will create that for him. And he hasn't really had that in Golden State. Am I wrong?
No, you're right. That's exactly kind of what I'm saying. Why I think that his role ended up being a little bit too much to where he was capable or what he was capable of doing post-injury. There aren't wide open shots, or there haven't been in this Golden State Warriors offense, especially the last 2 years. Another issue is just they didn't have a ton of depth in terms of their three-point shooting, which is something kind of crazy to say about the Warriors. But the last 2 years, it really has been Steph and Klay, and there hasn't been a lot of depth in terms of three-point shooters coming in off the bench when he's working in with different, rotations. For example, he worked with the second unit. He actually was better when working with Chris Paul, which I think was something interesting. When Klay Thompson moved to the bench this past season, his numbers went up. And I think that he benefits from having a ball handler working with him 100%. Whereas Steph also wants to get some of the catch and shoot threes. I think Steph, you don't necessarily want him always creating off the dribble and always trying to facilitate. So I do think there was a little bit of a push and pull into the fact where Klay Thompson wasn't shooting just at this insane all NBA level. Because the bottom line is when they're both hitting the way he was when he's an all NBA player, you've got the best backcourt in the NBA, and especially in terms of 3-point shooting. That's hard to stop. They can shoot their way out of some problems. And also they're able to push the pace earlier, which is another big thing. The Warriors were a lot slower offensively, bottom third of the league in both fast break points and points off turnovers, which is something that hadn't been the case during the 2022 season because transition threes are something that also allowed Steph and Klay to unlock another level of their game, which is going to be a little bit interesting, I think, with the Mavs, because to your point, bringing in Kyrie immediately, I was like, well, maybe they'll pick up the pace a little bit more. That's not Luka's game, but how much can they realistically look to get those transition opportunities? Because those are easy looks at the end of the day, but also you have to have defense to do that, Nick. So
Mavs have played defense. They were the number one defense in the NBA for the last 3 months of the season. So we'll take that.
Yeah, 100%.
When you talk about Klay Thompson forcing it too much or pounding the rock too much, what is he doing? What is he just starting top of the key and is trying to create for himself? Or what is he doing when you're imagining that?
I mean, it's a little bit of everything, but just, I'm just picturing Klay, on the dribble, going down the baseline. He's guarded. He's pulling up contested of a baseline too. It's just not just the 3-ball. I'm saying getting inside the arc. It's just why? That's a tough shot. Just make the extra pass, reset, whatever the situation may be. Just anytime to me, if you're Klay Thompson and you're not open, you don't have to take it. And it felt like every single time he gets the ball, he has to take it. And some frustration from the fans was it felt like hero ball. I think that's just the example, or the phrase that rings a bell for a lot of folks. It's not necessarily 1 or 2 looks, sometimes top of the key, sometimes not, but just wherever he's getting the ball. If Klay Thompson's getting it, you feel like it's a black hole a little bit because he's dribbling and he's going to try to find a way to get his own shot. I think the times he was at his best is where he had more patience and he let the game come to him and he just moved the ball because that's when the Warriors offense is at their best. So it's not necessarily one thing he was doing, but just in general, not waiting for the most open shot or the best opportunity, whether it be off the dribble, whether it be, hey, he came off a screen, but it didn't work out. The play didn't pan out the way they thought. He still guarded. Like, just reset. We don't have to take that. And it just felt like a lot of times he felt like he had to take that because he wants to be the hero. He wants to be the player he was. He wants to make sure he's putting points on the board and being the secondary scorer when it doesn't always have to be that way. You got to have patience.
I'm interested to see how he fits into that third scorer role again, going back to, because he did that with Steph and KD. I mean, he was exactly in that role. So I'm curious how he goes back into that, if that really resets things for him and really allows him to play with a little bit more freedom and not feeling like he has to force things. So I'm curious how that works out. I'm also very curious how the defense works out, because this is a question that arises for the Mavericks now is, how can you build a defense with Luka, Kyrie, and a 34-year-old coming off of these two terrible injuries, Klay Thompson? Can you do it? What does he bring defensively? We'll talk about all that and more coming up.
You don't believe you shouldn't be here.
Shut it down! Let's go home!
All right, Kylen, let's talk about Klay Thompson some more. Klay Thompson joining the Mavericks. The Mavs get the trade. And by the way, while we're recording this, they just announced that the Warriors are going to retire Klay Thompson's jersey. So on the way out already, they're like, hey, we're retiring his number 11 jersey. I don't think that was in question, but at least they did it like immediately, like as soon as they could.
Yeah, I like that. I like that move. Like I said, pay your respects. Like the dude, whatever you want to say about the business decision, he did incredible things for the organization, and everything that fans have been pouring out on social media has been 100% in support of Klay Thompson. Like, I don't think anyone blames him for wanting to move on. There's been some blame placed in the organization maybe for not doing enough to keep him, because there's a little bit of a, hey, grass is greener. Yeah, maybe you think it's great to move on from Klay Thompson, but realistically, who's going to fill the two guard? Who's going to shoot 39% from three on a down year? They don't have any prospects right now. Well, let's see how that works. You need a floor spacer with Steph.
From somebody that has covered a team with a $16 million trade exception, that you were like, oh man, we're going to get somebody good with this. Doesn't always pan out. The Harrison Barnes trade exception was the biggest of all time at that point, and they didn't get anybody for it.
Exactly.
Nothing happened.
No, it's like I said, the outlook is still very shaky for the Warriors for sure. And what so far they've been striking out left and right. When you see what happened with Paul George and the way all of these deals are transpiring, I personally, Nick, was on board with Zach LaVine to the Golden State Warriors.
They're going to give you a pick.
They're going to get rid of him for nothing. They're going to give you a pick. Exactly. They're going to give you a pick and Zach LaVine for Andrew Wiggins. Do it. But I don't know. That was people were a little bit split on that. But anyways, could go down a whole separate rabbit hole on that. Klay Thompson, though, to the Mavs.
It's after 2022, it's kind of nice to see the Warriors fan base like just melt down, to be honest.
Yeah. Oh, dude, the meltdowns have been epic. If you just want to entertain yourself, just like search Warriors Twitter, Dub Nation, like meltdowns. I got a text today. I got a text today from someone that's like, so is the Steph trade request next? Guys.
Here we go.
We're going to go there.
That's like saying, well, Dirk request a trade. Like, no,
exactly.
Come on. Like,
come on. But it's just the meltdown is very real. So
our friends over at the Light Years pod, another Warriors podcast, said that they did a show where they took 2 hours of calls. And I was like, did you have to like go to BetterHelp afterwards? Like, did you have to go to therapy after 2 hours of calls? I was like, oh my gosh, I can't imagine what they heard. those two hours.
There's one reason. Yeah, I'm happy that we don't take calls, like actual calls in Locked On Warriors, because not good for your mental health. Definitely not right now in Dub Nation. That's for sure.
They're melting down. Wow. After being at game 1 and game 2 in Golden State and hearing the Warriors like all down the hallway, then like just still hear it in my head. Like, it's a nice feeling.
Well,
it's a nice feeling.
Yeah.
Klay Thompson now. Klay Thompson defensively.
We'll laugh about it now.
Where's he at defensively? Because 4 or 5 years ago, he was on the all defensive team. He was known as like the best two-way player in the NBA at times because he's elite defensively at point of attack, and then he was one of the best 3-point shooters in the league. Where is he now?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. He was an elite, like next level, all NBA point of attack defender. He's not that anymore, but he's still a good defender. And that's one thing you asked me. We were talking about this leading up to this. And I'm like, you're not getting a bad defender. Not at all. The thing is, he's not the number 1 point of attack defender now for the Warriors. Like, he's not that guy taking on the best player or with the best perimeter defending, but he's still good. Like, Klay Thompson is still good. I think to me, where I see the biggest difference is just a slight loss in the lateral quickness, which is exactly to be expected. Again, to remind folks, ACL tear, Achilles tear, 2 of the most gruesome injuries you can have in sports, back to back. did not play in a single game between those two, tore the ACL in a scrimmage during an offseason workout after recovering from the Achilles tear.
Ugh.
So you just have to realize it does have an impact on the body. So I think he's just lost a half step. Like it's a little bit, but it's to the point where like, hey, you can't now be our number one point of attack defender. You now can't be our number one guy out on the perimeter. But that doesn't mean he's not 2 or 3. And I still think he's a very good defender. He's going to be above average. The problem is though that you've got Kyrie and you've got Luka Doncic. And from what I saw, Nick, I mean, can you just switch out Luka and a cone out there? Like, are they interchangeable at this point?
Okay. With the,
I didn't watch the whole body of work. I'm gonna be honest, but watching the series against the Celtics, I was like,
I know.
Oof.
It was one of the most frustrating.
Tough watch, dude.
One of the most frustrating things about the finals was seeing Luka and like all the goodwill of like he was good defensively for the last 2-3 months of the season, and he would hold his own. He would be in a spot. First round, he was shutting down Kawhi. I mean, Kawhi was coming off an injury too, but Luka was on the injury report the entire playoffs and struggling and getting injections and all kinds of crazy things. And so to see him be that bad defensively and like confirm all the biases and all the things that people thought about him was like so frustrating for Mavericks fans because it took away all the goodwill that he had maybe built up getting there. And he almost didn't because of that, he almost didn't get any credit for going to the finals.
Yeah.
And so we'll see how time changes that. But your point about Klay being like still a fine defender, the Mavs have a system where if you can just be okay in your role, which is why if Luka's okay in his role and okay in his spot defensively, they can be a good defense. You got two bigs behind you. You've got Lively and Gafford that you can funnel guys to. The problem is they're losing Derrick Jones Jr., who was the guy that guarded the best perimeter guy on the other team.
Correct. You
and
still
replacing him with Klay Thompson. And yes, teams will run so many screens to like Luka will guard the best player eventually on any possession because they're just hunting him eventually, unless they're trying to do some other stuff. And then now the Mavs have this issue where Quentin Grimes and Najee Marshall are their 2 best perimeter defenders probably. PJ Washington as well, but a different type of defender. Yeah. And they're going to be coming off the bench. And I'm curious what happens with that and how they work that out and how a kid massages that and figures out how to, defend, in certain lineups and all that. I'm very curious to see how that works out because all the things that you're saying and all the things that we've heard is Klay Thompson was disrespected by the Warriors, wants to start, and there's an ego there, and he's got kid has got to figure that out and figure out how to integrate him and work it in there. And he may not close games sometimes because they need to just defend really hard.
That's 100%. And I make some parallels to the Warriors during their 2022 title run because their best perimeter defender and point of attack defender was Gary Payton II, who was not a starter. But there were times during not just the regular season, but the postseason, given certain matchups, if they felt like that starting 5 was really going to struggle and really going to be exposed, and they want to make sure they started out strong defensively and strung together stops at the beginning of games, they would start GP2 and they would tweak the lineup a little bit. So I think that's still an option. Are there times where you do need to start one of your best perimeter defenders? Yeah, there's going to be. And I think one of the beautiful things about a postseason 7-game series is you can kind of tweak a little bit, see how things go. But if you are getting exposed or you feel like early on in games, we've got to be better defensively before some of those rotations start to get mixed up, maybe you go with one of your better perimeter defenders. But I think it's going to be really a tough test for Jason Kidd to figure out how to handle the egos because there is a sense of pride and there is an ego to Klay Thompson. That's not a secret. That's not something that I think anyone can deny at this point. Sure. But with the Warriors this past season, I will say I was surprised by how well he took it getting moved to the bench. It was something literally like last year during 2022-23. A lot of us in the media were saying that would never happen because the questions were asked because Klay Thompson has dealt with slumps for like several games in a row. He's not hitting. His defense maybe his defense isn't maybe 100%. And then you also got offensively, you're not hitting shots. You're forcing things. You're turning the ball over. XYZ. Like at what point do you not start him? And Steve Kerr was very much like, no, Klay's always going to start. We know what he can do. And that changed. Like that narrative completely shifted this past season. And we were very, very curious to see how Klay would handle it. But he handled it well. He handled it a lot better than I thought he would. He came up on the podium after the first time where he was moved to the bench and said, I had some tough conversations with different people I respect around the team, around the NBA. Like you can still be a great player coming in off the bench. Like starting or not starting doesn't 100% define the quality of your talent. And it doesn't. Yeah. Sometimes it's fitting the right pieces together that are going to match up with an opposing team's lineup. And that's the reality. He took it better than I thought. He came up and handled it when he spoke to the media in a very mature way. He did not appear to be sulking when he came in off the bench. Like I said, his numbers improved. His numbers went up. So that's one positive I think Mavs fans can take away is this past season was the first time in his career that Klay Thompson was not starting. And he handled it well. And he was very productive off the bench. You didn't see him come in and sulk and not try. His numbers actually improved. So that's one of the good things. It's still something I think that you're going to have to handle delicately. Because that's why he's moving, right? Is because he wants to feel valued. He wants to have an important role. He wants to have a starting role, a bigger role than what he's expecting to get with the Warriors. So there still are going to have to be, some kid gloves on when you're dealing with the situation, pun intended. But
he's wearing
the positive is that he handled it well. He handled it maturely when it happened this past season. Oh no, what did I talk over?
You gotta ask them. I'm just the coach.
With the kid gloves. Last thing, there's a report from 95.7 The Game. Jason Dumas said Klay has been equally as exhausting behind the scenes. It's not as loud. It's not as loud because it's not you stomping on someone's chest. If he's slamming stuff on the bench, sulking, doing that on the court, how do you think it is in practice? How do you think it is in the locker room? It has been uncomfortable. It has. It just doesn't come out as loudly as Draymond Green saying that Klay was doing some of those things. What do you say to that he's been exhausting behind the scenes?
There definitely have been points where Klay Thompson's frustrated in his own performance, and that is shown when you talk about him maybe, throwing something on the bench, whatever. But I will say, as someone who's been inside of practices and seen behind the scenes, like I don't see any fracturing or uncomfortableness in terms of his relationship with his teammates versus like the Draymond Green situation. To me, is totally different. Like you punch someone, the team chemistry was completely thrown to me, and a lot of folks who followed the team and covered the team for a long time. Like that was a turning point in the season before the season even started. Versus Klay Thompson, to me, like it's more he's frustrated within himself. That's not to say that it doesn't affect the players around you, but I think he's done his best to try to work through some of those issues and say, hey, you know what? I'm going to continue to hold my head high. I'm going to continue to try and practice. I'm not going to get with the frustration. It doesn't mean that we haven't seen frustration, especially ever since the injury. There have been a ton of points where he comes out and he talks to the media and he flat out has said, like, I've been frustrated. I'm down on myself. Like, I know I should be playing better, which is a positive. He's taking accountability, but also sometimes that frustration comes out and boils over. I don't think it's anywhere near the same level of frustration within the organization as there has been for Draymond Green. Like that's a different level. Draymond Green. Nick, I don't even have the words for Draymond Green. Like how many ejections and suspensions until you realize every single time this officiating staff, they're going to do everything possible. They're going to, really pinpoint any little thing you're doing and look for an excuse to throw you out. And it negatively affects the team. His suspension this past year could have been the difference in the Warriors being a play-in team or not, and being seeded in the playoffs. Huge. And then you look at that and what situation are we in? It could have been a different outcome. I don't think you can compare the two situations. To me, it's nowhere near the level of frustration with Draymond Green. But yes, there have been times where Klay Thompson's frustration in his own performance certainly can make for uncomfortable moments. If he goes in the locker room and he's throwing something in his locker, like I've been there as an athlete, like you're always just like, ooh, like, just kind of look the other way, but not to the level of Draymond Green. Nope, not going to go there.
You played college soccer?
Yeah.
Did you slam stuff? Were you like a sulker, slam things on the bench?
No. I never sulked or slammed stuff. I was always one who said, let the play do the talking. And if you're not doing well, come out and, if you got to knock someone over, you got to let a little of the aggression out that way, do it, but just don't get ejected. I never got a red card.
Never punched anybody?
I'm just going to say that. I never punched anybody. Don't get that extreme. No, I never had this report.
This report, by the way, my opinion on it, Luka does that stuff like every game.
Yeah,
it's like that. Just sound like that, like basketball stuff. Like, yeah, frustrated with yourself. I missed 10 threes in a game.
Play. Yes, you see other players do it in the NBA. Like you walk to the bench, something horrible happened, and you throw a water bottle. That's not something that's an anomaly. Just Klay Thompson, not by any means. So, no. I don't know. I mean, there's an ego there. I'll say that, but I think the report was a little bit taken out of context. I don't.
For every athlete there is, and that's a thing Jason Kidd will have to figure out. And hey, he's a finals coaching coach now, right? And so now he gets to figure that out. And Kylen Mills gets to figure out what the Warriors are going to do. And you can go listen to her on Locked On Warriors.
Tonight, Nick. It's going to be an adventure, dude. It's going to be a freaking adventure.
How they move on from this? Go check the show out there and continue listening to Locked On Mavs. We'll have all kinds of stuff all throughout the offseason. Guys, thanks so much for listening to Locked On Mavs.
Peace out.
Boom.
We might be the Splash Bros, but
Raccoon
you
Squad.